Robert Scott Bell Show.
More often than not in the old media, they often challenge the legitimacy of natural products. That, oh, they're not scientific, they're not validated, they're not real. And, of course, when the FDA finds that they do work, they'll often kind of pounce on it and say, well, it's a new drug then, and you can't have it because you're well, they won't say it because you're competing with Big Pharma, but we know where their allegiances lie. But where we speak the truth and they lie, that is the unique nature of what we do here on the Robert Scott Bell Show, bringing out information that you don't often find anywhere else in the media, through Natural News, of course, and Mike Adams. Of course, we know Joe Mercola out there doing great work as well. And here's someone that I've had as a friend on Facebook for quite some time, and really great opportunity to bring him on board here with a terrific project that he's been working on for a while now called GreenMedInfo.com. And the tagline, where the evidence is sprouting up. I'd like to welcome for the first time to the Robert Scott Bell Show, Sayer G. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here with you today.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on board. I mean, you're doing just fantastic work in the research you're pulling together and, planting more seeds for legitimacy. It's not that I need others to legitimize what we know to be legitimate, but at the same time, what you're doing, Sayer, is to really make a bridge for people that might be inclined to come on over where we are, but might go, I want a little bit more scientific, let's say, validation or grounding.
Exactly. Yeah, most of us come to this field because of our personal experiences in nutrition and healing and, the evidence of our senses. We created the database in order to provide a tool for those who feel they have to have scientific, clinical, empirical evidence to support what maybe thousands of years of cross-culturally, consensually agreed-upon experience says is true, which is this carrot is good for your eyes, and this walnut's good for your brain, and such, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not enough that you've been using it for thousands of years for millions of people. We need proof. Well, look, you're providing some of that, which is very cool. Now, I've reviewed medical literature, peer-reviewed literature for many years. It's often very dry, dull, boring. A lot of times it's rife with conflicts of interest if you dig deep enough. That anything is getting published in regards to supporting natural remedies, medicines, and otherwise is shocking some days to me. But there is more than people would realize. Legitimate science happening, and it's going to be hard to navigate and access, sometimes costly to access. This GreenMedInfo.com seems to be something that's going to open up the possibility for a lot of people to access it.
Yes, our mission is to provide free and convenient access to the national treasure, which is known as Medline, and contains over 20 million biomedical citations from the life sciences and related fields. And basically, it's there already. No one knows about it. And we've just spent several years indexing the research that's most compelling to support natural healing.
It's a sensational project. Was this something that you just kind of stumbled upon, or tell me the origin point? What was the point you woke up and said, dude, I'm going to do this?
Well, actually, I'm in a unique position because I've worked in the natural products industry for almost a decade now. And what is most frustrating is when the FDA, FTC says you can't speak truthfully about the science that exists in the peer-reviewed medical literature, and that there's an unconstitutional gag order against speaking truthfully about that science. And so that's really what I wanted to create, was a conflict of interest-free database that really just reiterates the research that's there and classifies it or organizes it in a way that's convenient to access and quick.
Yes, yeah. Well, again, accessibility is everything. As I try to do over the years here on the Robert Scott Bell Show, is take sometimes complex scientific gobbledygook and egghead language and bring it down to the level that my son can understand. He's just entering the 6th grade. And I think that's something that, I think we could all do. In fact, very often when you take it down to that level, it's easier to understand if you haven't been filled with a lot of wrong ideas with conflicts of interest, emanating from the pharmaceutical industrial complex.
Exactly. Well, the miracle, I guess you could call it, is the fact that billions of dollars have been poured into researching lead compounds based on natural substances with the ultimate end game of producing synthetic analogs that then provide a patentable proprietary chemical. They can then get investors to get a return on investment with putting in $1 billion to get that clinical trial. So inadvertently, this really petrochemical, industrial, medical establishment, because as you may know, many of the drugs we use are really excreta from the sort of fine chemical subsector of the petrochemical industry. And basically, they have inadvertently proven the safety and the superiority of a large number of natural substances. So what we're doing, because these are in vitro and animal studies, relative to the human clinical trial, the golden calf of evidence-based medicine, they're considered meaningless. Well, we've bundled together thousands upon thousands of these studies so that they basically make an argument that, hey, this is how much research exists that you've been never been told about. Right.
Well, exactly. This is huge information that's being released here. The question is, how can you support this? This is not something that the huge petrodollars are going to want to support somebody that's pointing to this. And your point is also very important to understand that the reason that we don't hear about the studies is because they would then substantiate the natural substance as opposed to lead to what you said. It's the synthetic isolation and then the reproduction of it, the artificiality of it, that then becomes the drug that is patented and granted monopoly protection status. So you're going to the precipitating point before it gets there and saying, look, this is why they're doing it. We don't need all the other stuff.
Exactly, and it's a kiss of death to receive an FDA drug approval, because by definition, anything that will enable an investor to get a return on investment and be legally true to their fiduciary responsibility, it requires that they profoundly alter these perfect natural substances. And the byproduct, of course, is monstrous unintended adverse side effects.
Yep.
So good examples are turmeric page, which is one of 1,500 substances we've indexed. It contains 1,511 studies that show the benefit of this spice for over 580 diseases and expressive of 159 different pharmacological actions. And all of those are indexed in a way that shows, okay, there's 30 studies on it being effective for multi-drug resistant cancer and 180 for reducing oxidative stress. So we're just trying to provide that to the public at one glimpse. Okay, here it is. It's massive. Now just run with it,
Well, exactly. And I've just entered turmeric into the search engine in GreenMedInfo. And up comes just what you said. This is really extraordinary. This is very easy to use. And then you click these. This is beautiful. It worked. It worked. First try, Sayer. This is great. By the way, those of you just joining us here on the Robert Scott Bell Show, I'm interviewing Sayer G. He's with GreenMedInfo.com. A fantastic new search energy, and it's hosted with 100% solar energy. Liam Shep and I have talked about that, the need to, if you're in the Sun Belt, my goodness, what are we doing not having some solar support in this regard? That's ridiculous. So good job there as well. So as far as the links, I see them through social networks, and there's YouTube links, there's other things that people can learn about here, but how can people participate beyond just what I just did? Or, so for instance, I just go to greenmedinfo.com, I enter the search node turmeric, and I got up all of these studies. Now, if I open these studies, what can I do with it? What can't I do with it? What would require me to go further? I want to understand how we can make the best use of this database.
Well, what we've done is provide two layers. We have what's entirely a free layer, which every single one of the 17,700 studies we've indexed thus far is entirely free to view in its entirety as an abstract, and it links right back to Medline, which is the Library of Medicine's free database. Because what we're trying to do is encourage people to do their own fishing.
Yes.
When you go to, it's amazing because, we have this global brain, and Medline is really one convolution in it that's dedicated entirely to medicine. So you pop in a word like turmeric, you get over 4,100 citations, and eventually you find these little pearls. And that's what we've done over the past few years, is try to find those studies that show, okay, this natural substance is superior to this chemotherapeutic agent, for example, or I should say chemotoxic agent.
Very well said.
Yeah, but in terms of participation, we have introduced an integrative version, which is designed so that an individual, a clinician, a doctor can input up to 10 of the 2,300 ailments that we have indexed, and it will spit out a list of evidence to support the use of a natural substance or the problematic relationship with, say, pesticides for those conditions, therapeutic actions, which include yoga, tai chi, problematic actions, which include X-ray mammography and vaccination, and then it's hard linked to hundreds of Medline references, so they can slap this down on the desk of their physician and say, hey, listen, this is the evidence. It's not, and please let me use this in my treatment, if they're going to go that route, of course.
Well, that's kind of what I saw as you were describing that. That picture came into my head of all these people that say, I just want to show my doctor that this stuff is legitimate, it's real. Now, I'm not saying that even if you throw science in front of your doctor, he or she's going to read it, because we know many of them are just shut down. They're wearing horse blinders. But at the same point, it may give an opportunity to educate those doctors that are still able to be open enough to learn about these things. And so we can help the medical profession in this way. The patients that have become, quite honestly, smarter and more well-read than many of the medical community out there, this is a great tool for those that say, hey, listen, my doc would go along with this, but he says there's just not enough science. I'm not comfortable with it. You throw down some of this stuff, and that could open up eyes and ears in a good way.
Exactly. And another aspect of the project truly is to almost remove the priest of the body, which the conventional medical physician has become,
yes.
So that they we're trying to summarize the data in one-liners, so we take all the jargon, all the Greek, and we make it into something intelligible. Ultimately, we just encourage people to take the information, to make an informed choice, take back control of their health. So really that's what it's designed to do.
Well, it's very practical. It's easy to use. Now, if people want to step it up and really get, dig down and get full-on documents, like you said, this is the problem with a lot of the Medline. Unless you're a PhD professional in a university, you could spend a lot of money buying access to these studies. Is there a way to access these studies without, going broke?
The full studies are very difficult to obtain, although about 10 to 20% of them are provided for free through the Library of Medicine.
Right.
So when you go, if you go to an abstract you love on our site,
yes,
click the abstract source link, which is called PMID. It's a little hyperlink, and it goes to Medline. And then there you usually see some biomedical publishing firm that sells it. About $30 a pop, or you can get some kind of daily access. I don't usually go that route because I can't afford it. But
well, like I said, with the amount of research that you're covering here, I mean, like I said, you could fund a small country with all that you would have to buy. So that's why I'm saying give us some insight as to how we utilize this and access it for a lower cost, or even finding the free full-on papers.
Well, the thing that's so interesting about the biomedical publishing industry is that when these scientists actually sign off to have their work published by several firms that dominate the market, they actually give them the copyright. So
right.
It's a very unique situation. The balance of power has shifted to the biomedical publishing industry.
Yes.
And they make a large amount of money, but what recently happened was the National Library of Medicine compelled all these companies to provide a free abstract to the public because they were showing all this taxpayer money wasn't even resulting in an abstract. So that's really the basis of our project, is we're recapturing the abstracts and just giving them to the people and saying, listen, here's the research on 50 different natural substances that show activity against multi-drug resistant cancers. So
well, this is great. Listen, can you stick with me a little bit longer? We got to take a break here.
Yeah, I would love to.
All right, Sayer G is my guest this hour on the Robert Scott Bell Show, GreenMedInfo.com. Fascinating things, as always. If you'd like to be part of the program, leave a message 24/7, 866-939-BELL, 866-939-2355. All the links for today's show are up at robertscottbell.com as well, and I encourage you also at naturalnewsradio.com. If you're listening live through there, enter your email address. You'll get a daily update from the Robert Scott Bell Show as to all the things we're covering here. So we're coming right back with more Powerful Healing. We'll talk more about turmeric and cancer and other uses, because that's a fascinating, well-studied plant medicinal that we need to cover some more after this.
Know that your hormone.
Scott Bell.
Let's take a walk on the wild side.
Oh, righty. You're everywhere, baby. Radio, TV, the papers. Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right.
Robert Scott Bell.
Welcome back. We got a great new tool, accessing science that supports what we do here on the Robert Scott Bell Show, as well as if you're just out there wanting to learn and dig deeper for your own benefit or for the benefit of a healthcare provider that you consult with, or maybe you are a healthcare provider out there, natural, medical, whatever. Great opportunities with GreenMedInfo.com. Sayer G is doing fantastic work there. I'm glad to have him on board with me today as we cover this subject of moving the scientific goalposts back in our direction, because we have the support on that realm and that level as well. Sayer, thank you again for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you mentioned the turmeric because there's a lot of studies out there that support it for a lot of different uses. You mentioned in particular the cancer one. I know there's more than that, but I figure we could go into a couple of studies that jump out for you that if people knew, they'd be jumping all over this.
Okay, one of the most amazing findings was just a few years ago, which was that curcumin, the primary polyphenol in turmeric, was able to reverse a misfolded protein associated with the CFTR gene mutation, which is what causes cystic fibrosis, the classical sort of monogenic disease that causes mortality by age 40 on average. So in this model, they were able to reverse the pathology and basically correct the disease using curcumin.
Cystic fibrosis reversible via natural remedies or medicines or herbs or plants, basically. So this was, of course, the studies designed and funded in order to find new drugs, I imagine. I mean, they weren't looking at this one as to say, oh, well, maybe if we can prove this plant is good, we'll tell everybody about the plant.
Exactly. In fact, what I found looking at all the citations on curcumin on Medline was there's constantly an attempt to generate these synthetic analogs and to show they're superior, and inevitably they fail over and over again. Well,
and of course the word on curcumin is tremendous because there are a number of supplement companies that are utilizing the information. However, I don't know, they have to be kind of veiled in talking about some of it, but in a sense, there is word out there, and this has been one of the faster-growing areas within the natural products industry, the growth of turmeric and curcumin.
Yeah, it's a unique substance because of all the radioprotective natural substances we've indexed. It is number one, looking at all types of exposures from medical radiation to radioisotopes released through nuclear accidents, for example. So it's got a broad range of properties, and that's only one of 159 distinct pharmacological actions that we've identified with curcumin, being that it's radioprotective.
Yeah, and when you speak radioprotective, it doesn't protect you from the Robert Scott Bell Show. It protects you from the dangerous ionizing radiation that we are being exposed to planet-wide. If we talk about the Fukushima disaster, where we covered and Natural News covered like nowhere else in media, and, of course, the issue that very few people are willing to touch that I have talked about over the years, the depleted uranium munitions that are being used overseas, whether it be in Iraq, Afghanistan, or elsewhere, and the fact that there are loads of birth defects and cancers among the people there, and also the clusters within our own military personnel, much less private contractors. And this is a disaster. This is something that the old media is loath to connect with or talk about, and even some in the new media are very concerned about because, well, listen, this really calls to question whether our own Department of Defense is putting our troops in harm's way and not protecting them legitimately from a very, very, say toxic. It's not toxic in the same sense, but yes, in a sense that is damaging to the very genetic integrity of our species, much less our troops.
What a profound topic. This is so timely because recently research was revealed showing that the uranium released by Fukushima, which is basically the same type as the depleted uranium, ends up going into the DNA in our body, and once there exhibits a genotoxicity that's 5 orders of magnitude higher than explained by the radiolytic decay, because it doesn't emit gamma rays, so they consider it a low radiological risk, and yet because of the way it binds to DNA and releases through photoelectron induction all these hydroxyl radicals, it is one of the most damaging substances ever released into our environment.
Well, and this is why over the time span since Fukushima hit, I keep coming back to the strategies we need to take now. It's an invisible thing. It's a systemic worldwide phenomenon, and it may not cause cancer tomorrow, but we had already enough things working against us in our environment just from a toxicological perspective to add more background levels of radiation into the mix. It is precipitating or facilitating higher infant mortality rates now. We're coming, preliminary data still coming through the Pacific Northwest here in the United States, but cancer clusters, et cetera, associated with. I mean, we've got the love affair with radiation of the allopathic medical profession by X-ray, CT scan, et cetera, and, of course, mammography, on and on. And you've got things there at GreenMedInfo.com as well on these issues. On top of that, the ionizing radiation exposure due to TSA going through these things if you're not opting out. And, of course, the cancer clusters now that are becoming in evidence, I think, up in the Boston area of TSA personnel just standing around those machines on and on and on.
Yeah, the problem is that the world governments use a radiation risk model that was developed before the discovery of DNA, and it was based on atomic blasts and the type of external radiation that you average the dose across the volume affected. So it's a really alien concept to low energy particles, or what they call hot particles, accumulating in your body and then exhibiting, again, up to 1 million times more harmful effects that is explained by this older radiation risk model. So it's such a huge issue, and it would literally indict the infrastructure of nuclear power, the military industrial establishment, and it would also undermine the sort of medical or nuclear medicine or medical radiation business as well.
Yeah, this is a serious issue. It'll become more serious as the truth comes out. We're not waiting for the so-called authorities, and you have to dig deep to find reference points to these things and then make sense of them the way you have, Sayer. Particularly, as I said, the depleted uranium issue, which is very real. Now, I understand you have access to information that hasn't been published. Are you able to reveal anything more about it on the Robert Scott Bell Show today, so that more, especially if you have family members that are serving overseas, that they're being exposed to this? That we want to get them some turmeric, we want to get them some homeopathic medicine, we want to get them some sea vegetation, we want to get them some selenium. All of these things that we know can counteract it in the meantime, where we might have to take more invasive methods to pull these hot particles out if it's at all possible.
Yeah, there's quite a lot we've accumulated on our database, because for 3 years we've been collecting research on attenuating the adverse effects of medical radiation, both diagnostic and, quote, therapeutic, because researchers had found that they were basically killing people and animals when using these, quote, therapies. So they were looking deep into natural substances to prevent that. So we have a huge section on radiation-associated toxicity, which includes all the different natural substances which reduce the toxic effects. And it was actually Mike Adams at Natural News that rightfully pointed out that rosemary is one of the most radioprotective substances, and other fat-soluble herb extracts as well as vitamins. They seem to be uniquely suited for preventing damage. But when it comes to removing, post-Chernobyl, there was a massive undertaking to detoxify children who, as you know, are maybe 10 to 100 times more susceptible to adverse effects due to how fast their cells replicate. So they found they could pull out up to 67% within a matter of a few weeks just using apopectin. So we have a whole section on helping to remove radioisotopes that have accumulated in the body.
So what would be the search term in this case? We go to GreenMedInfo.com, and we want to learn about the things that have scientific backing, validity, and confirmation, like the apopectin and some of the things, many of the things I've talked about. But if we want to get it in one place, what would our search term be?
Yes. There's one section. You go to the ailments index, and then you go to the R's, because it's A to Z, and you look up radiation disaster associated toxicity. We have a video. We even have a whole Facebook page dedicated to just the health issues associated with fallout.
Well, this is fantastic. Yeah, I just clicked it, and he's telling the truth, folks. That's why we have him on the Robert Scott Bell Show here. Go to the ailments page, and you'll see all of these things. And, wow, what a database you're doing. This is really a great, great service to the people of planet Earth who would avail themselves of it. Is there a model that can sustain this, that can make it economically viable? Because I don't want to see this thing perish.
Well, what we've done is, thankfully it's been all volunteer for the first 3 years, and we have just now found some support. We're very, very happy that Dr. McCullough is actually helping us with some of the solar-powered hosting fees. And just so you know, I'm in Florida, and it's 19% uranium powering our infrastructure it has a half-life of 4.4 billion years, and it boils water to move turbines. I mean, this is the most primitive technology on the planet. I really hope others will use 100% solar power to generate the hosting for their sites in the future.
No, I think it's brilliant. Again, I've covered this many times since this story broke about how barbaric it is. We're using something, as you said, with a half-life of billions of years to boil water? Come on, you kidding? That's what it is. And, of course, it's clean until you take into account all that it takes to produce the facilities to make it. And until, of course, something goes wrong, then it's a disaster beyond just, okay, we have an oil platform on fire. Yes, that's bad. It's pollution is on and on, or other things. But nature can contain those things. We don't know what the we're sort of getting a hint of what the repercussions are, but how do we counteract it planet-wide? The people are going to be in a disastrous state of lack of health on top of everything else that was already bad. So again, the database is fantastic that we can access this information and implement every strategy possible to reverse the damage that, again, is an ongoing battle that we're dealing with every day.
It is. We also have a section under problematic actions that includes, quote, radiotherapy, X-ray mammography. The research we've discovered is that low-dose radiation, the exact same wavelengths used in diagnostic mammography, is inducing breast cancer at 5 times higher rates than, again, the previous radiation model allowed for, because lower dose radiation is more carcinogenic than higher dose radiation. So it's almost like endocrine disruption with petrochemicals in the parts per trillion range. It's almost like a hormone. If you increase it, it's actually not as harmful in some cases. So,
yeah, you get more acute damage that can be reversed in an instantaneous way versus the chronic, debilitating, that slow kind of systemic impact that eventually results in horrific cancers. And that is what we want to see reversed here, because right now I don't know that we have the technology unless aliens come down from another dimension to clean this thing up.
You're correct. I mean, there's some bioremediation research we've been indexing as well, using certain plants to try to accumulate the radioisotopes, but they are impossible to detoxify. You have to isolate them somewhere, and our planet is just not necessarily going to be stable enough to do that, to just keep it cordoned off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, Sayer, I am so pleased that we can connect finally. I've seen all your good works that we've connected via the social media as well. Now we can obviously do a lot more with this database, GreenMedInfo.com, and I hope that all the Robert Scott Bell listeners, show listeners, can really plug into that if you want to support your efforts to learn more about why you are doing the things in nature that we all should be doing. Now we have some more of the science to back it up, and we're all for that. And Sayer G, I'm so grateful that you take the time to come on the show today, as well as I hope that we can have you back on to talk about some ongoing issues.
It's been an honor, and it would be a great honor to return. Thank you so much for the work you do.
All right, Sayer G, GreenMedInfo.com is the place to go, and RobertScottBell.com, all the links to it as well, and we'll do more with Sayer G in the future. Thank you so much. For now, a quick break, and we'll be back afterwards to talk more about the USDA failure. Yeah, they have so. They're USDA. They're scientific, right? Well, maybe not, because salmonella is okay in ground turkey. Beneficial bacteria in raw milk? Not okay. Interesting. Is the world turning upside down? How's it turned upside down? Or inside out? Well, you're listening to the Robert Scott Bell Show, so we'll rebalance it all for you here. We'll feel real good after this story. Covered so well by Mike Adams with Natural News. I've got that story linked as well. We'll be right back to cover it and more after this.